Correct.
Yay, welcome everyone to IIoT World's Manufacturing Day with our kickoff session entitled Creating the Foundation of Digital Manufacturing. My name is not Irene Petrick. I will be moderating this session. You may see that in the agenda today. She may be joining us shortly, but she had an emergency at the facility that she's at. So we will move ahead and onward and upward. Let's start by familiarizing yourself with the webinar tool. If you could, for a couple of moments, take a look around and identify where the chat is. And there's also a Q&A panel and pane here. A few things to be aware from a housekeeping standpoint. Today's session is being recorded and it will be available on demand approximately 2 days after the event. And we'll be sending out a follow-up email to inform you of that as well. We do have some upcoming known dates for future events that you can join us. June 16th, we'll be having IIoT World's Smart Cities Day. August 12th is IIoT World's Energy Day. October 6th is IIoT World's ICS Cybersecurity Day. And last but not least, wrapping up the year on December 8th, we will have IIoT World's Manufacturing Day once again. And we will be taking questions at the conclusion of this session, so please post those in the Q&A panel. As I said, you can locate that up on the toolbar. And if you'd like to, you can also send them in to us via Twitter or LinkedIn. And you can leverage the hashtag IIoT World Day. That's hashtag IIoT World Day. And this track will run for 60 minutes and we'll have you out of here on time, I promise. So it won't be possible to run the virtual conference without our sponsors. So I want to definitely give a special thanks to Aliantia, Canvas, Eurotech, Hitachi Vantara, HiveMQ, Fortinet, Losant, Trend Micro, Ursalia, Vertex, and WellAware for making this possible for the continuation of this thought leadership to you folks. So today I'm joined by 4 colleagues who each bring very different perspectives to the topics ranging from startups to large companies. Now, all these organizations face some of the same hurdles. However, in the digital transformation journey, data is at the heart of this digital transformation. But to be successful, companies must consider hardware and software issues, AI models, and the complex interactions of technology, people and processes, and organizational and cultural changes. So to begin, I'll ask each panelist to introduce himself and then give us his point of view about what helps build a sustainable foundation for digital manufacturing organization. So Antonio, welcome. Please, let's begin with you. I think you're on mute, Antonio.
Here we are.
There we go.
Nice, everybody. Nice. It's good to have so many people connected today. Let's say a brief introduction. I spent before founding, co-founding Aliantia, we spent 20 years in telecommunication in large companies. Let's say starting 2007, I thought IoT was the next big thing, so that was the focus since then. And we started our company in 2011. So in terms of key things, I think the one thing for the foundation of digital manufacturing is for us is to have the data availability. So having the data from the machines, and it's not just getting the data, but also having the possibility to have it from a workshop floor, so have a full view of what is going on the OT side, and then also having the governing data across the enterprise. So data becomes part of the enterprise, becomes part of the asset, because not only the machines, the production asset are becomes that, but also the data they have. And so the data can also be sold, quote unquote, as part of the offering, as part of the product itself. And so the company needs to have the capability to govern the data and orchestrate the data and control the data they have.
Well, thank you, Antonio. I appreciate the insights. Dominic, would you care to share? Introduce yourself.
Sure. So hi, my name is Dominic Obermeier. I am the Chief Technology Officer at HiveMQ. I personally have a background in open standards and in machine-to-machine communication protocols. So in the past, I was involved with the specification of standards like MQTT. And nowadays, I'm also specifying Sparkplug at the Eclipse Foundation. I wrote a book about the foundations of Internet of Things. So, and I care a lot about industrial IoT and about the digitalization of the modern factories. So one of the key things I've come to learn over the years is that open standards, which basically define in the internet world, are key for any interoperability and communication between any machines. The same is also true for industrial Internet of Things. So I think it's really good that we're now starting to break up data silos and also betting on open standards in order to connect the shop floor to the business and to the cloud.
Yeah, the world of standardization is an interesting piece of this puzzle indeed. Thank you. Thank you for sharing, Dominic. Edward, over to you. Oh, I think you're on mute, Edward.
Thank you, Greg.
Sure.
Good morning, good afternoon. I assume you can hear me now. Yes, good afternoon. My name is Edward Benning. I'm the Digital Manufacturing and Operations Lead in Accenture in the Netherlands. I have a 20-year background in consulting. Joined the industry for some time and back in Accenture since 2.5 years. So I think what I heard from Antonio, what I heard from Dominique, I can only consist on that. It's just giving a little bit more context. If you see what we want to accomplish with digital manufacturing and the digital transformation, it's a journey we are on. There's all kinds of new technologies coming in that can help us on accelerating in this journey. There's a lot of value trapped in the enterprise, and we want to unlock this value. But we also see that we have daily operational issues on production performance, on production planning, and how can I be more in control of my operations. So if you look at the digital manufacturing journey, the question is, how can we unlock the real value? And what we typically see is we don't have the data available to make the case, the business case. Data is not complete, data is not available, data is not accessible, data is incorrect, data is giving us conflicting information. So what I'm saying is to create a journey towards digital manufacturing, we need to create better data to make fact-based case. And so I would say to create a foundation, start with your data and collecting the data.
So it's all about data, either having enough of it or not being able to segregate it and hone it down into using what you need. Outstanding. All right, Terry, if you please introduce yourself and open us up.
Excellent. Thanks, Greg. My name is Thierry van Landegem, and I'm the leader of the MHub Accelerator. My career has been focused on new products and services, and digitization is foundational into that. I worked in various organization structures, from corporates to startups and in between, as well as in different industries, as in telecom, IT, automotive, as well as manufacturing. So now I'm at MHub, and MHub is a hard tech innovation ecosystem. It is really all about bringing more innovation in the world of manufacturing and hardware product development. And one of the key drivers we see are startups. So we are helping startups in that field, starting up and scaling up. And we have done this successfully. And now I'm leading an accelerator, a hard tech focused accelerator. And the first cohort of action is industrial IoT. So this is very pointed from that perspective. Now, with respect to foundations, I hear my fellow panelists talk about data and data availability. I want to take it one step back and focus on solving a real pain point. Digitization and digital manufacturing is not about shiny object syndrome, I would say. It is really about what is a real pain point in your manufacturing value chain. Focus on that where you can really make an impact because you're solving something. And of course, you need then to have the right data in order to do that. So what you will do is you will experiment on that with the solution for that pain point and learn from it.
Great insight. No, thank you for sharing. You know, we often hear about how hard it is to start a digital transformation, and even more about how hard it is to scale successful proof of concepts, from a pilot to full production. Edward, you get to work with a wide variety of companies. What do you see as necessary to go from pilot to scale?
Yes, a very interesting question, and yes, I see a lot of companies struggling there. And if I talk about digital manufacturing, I don't see it as a single event. It's, to me, it's a journey we are talking about, and this journey, I see a number of key success factors. And think about, we need a clear vision, and we need a clear ambition, and we need the right sponsorship. And think about also how can you engage the different entities in your company, departments. Think about the different sites. What we need to do is create an holistic approach with business case linked to the different lean enablers. And of course, there's a lot of new technologies come into play. And we're talking about integrating the new technologies with existing technologies, because we have a whole brownfield there, which we want to utilize. We're not replacing that. So it's about integrating, let's say, a legacy technology with all kinds of new technologies. And how? And the question is, how can we leverage these new technologies in the best way to accomplish the success we're looking at? And this is where to start. And once we started, how can we scale? And I typically explain it a little bit as climbing the Mount Everest. You don't do that out of the blue. You start that with a clear objective, with sponsorship, with probably years of preparation. And once you get to the mountain, you go from base camp to camp 1 to camp 2, camp to camp 3, and sometimes even go back to acclimatize, etc. And at the end, with the right dedication, you might need where you want to go. And so don't see the digital transformation as a one-time step. It's a number of very small steps you need to take, and to be successful on that, you need to create a platform how to accelerate on that journey with these small steps.
That's a fantastic analogy. I mean, it's the first time I've heard someone put it in terms of mountain climbing. I think Everest is a great example. I mean, you hear about this being a journey, right? But well, you see what happens to people that start out for Everest and there's no planning and they just decide on a whim. Bad things ensue. So great points. Dominic, what's your take on getting to scale with companies you've worked with?
Yeah, so this was, I just want to add to what Edward said. So I think he was spot on with what he said. I would even go a step further, actually. If you want to climb the Mount Everest, you need to do step by step, and then you have to split the large milestones, which Edward pointed out, like all the base camps. What we found is key, and this is what successful organizations do, and with that I mean we were working with from small startups till Fortune 500 companies, and we're working with the largest automotive companies in the world, digitizing their factories. But what we found is like a key success criteria is that organizations are capable of going step by step and doing incremental improvements on their journey. So yeah, and this is also especially coming from a lean mindset. This makes a lot of sense because you really want to avoid any, let's say, waste which doesn't bring any value. And so when it comes to the technology implementation, or to actually how to do your digitization project, there are a few things to consider. And one thing which I really came to believe is what a professor here at the Technical University in Munich, one of the best universities in Germany, once said, Professor Dr. Breu. He said, digitization is really making computer science a core competency of a company. And I think this is right. Technology, so especially I think we will talk about the OT, IT conversions today. This is really, really key here because this incremental steps, this incremental agile way of thinking and of doing projects and of basically rolling out projects and trying with small milestones and a lot of success criteria along the way. This really also needs technology that enables that kind of thinking. And yeah, I think this is key. And yeah, I'm happy to dig deeper into that. Especially when we talk about how IT and OT, how they need to come together.
Interesting perspective. There's a lot of detail to manage in that. Terry, from your perspective, how important are stakeholders in this whole scaling effort? We've talked about the organizations. What about the other folks that are engaged in this?
Well, good question, actually. And stakeholders, I would not jump too fast as internal and external. Yes, of course. We need to involve all stakeholders at the macro level, but I will also point out that it's also needed at a micro level. At the macro level, indeed, you need not just to look at your company, your organization, interacting with other players, think about suppliers on the one side and the customers on the other side. But what is more critical for me in order to start and building further on what my fellow panelists have been saying at the micro level. So within the company, within your organization, you also have not only the silos that are so often talked about and you need to interact between the two, but you also have that difference between the top of the organization and the bottom layer of the organization. Too often I've seen that a lot of these transformational activities are just steered from the top to the bottom. I'm characterizing it more as you know, the C-suite, and I've been part of it. The C-suite is looking at these fancy dashboards and trying to say what to do and what not to do. But clearly what is also very important is to involve as a stakeholder the machine operators, the shop floor as well. And that doesn't happen enough. And it becomes a sphere of if you don't involve them, there will be a kind of a feeling from the shop floor that we are not involved because it will impact us negatively. Whereas I would say that we need to have a culture between the top and the bottom, which is open and transparent, where there is a clear identification of what the pain points are. And the pain points, who knows the pain points the best? The guys and the girls on the shop floor, right? They know what the pain points are. So involve the machine operators and have a discourse, a talk which is about augmenting these people, helping these people, rather than I introduce digitization for getting rid of people. So I would say involving all the stakeholders inside the organization, between the top and the bottom, the shop floor and the C-suite, and also, of course, at the macro level between the different companies and organizations.
Great point. I hear you wholeheartedly, and I think that the term I always use to refer to that is social license. You know, if you don't have that buy-in collectively from all the folks that are coming to the table, you're not going to go anywhere with the project. So it's a great insight, Terry. Thank you. Yeah, we hear about, the OT, IT convergence, that it's necessary, the digital transformation required. Antonio, what advice can you give to our audience about this and, why the convergence is so important and why it's tough?
Well, first of all, I don't talk about convergence because the OT world and the IT world are so different that if you try to make them converge, I think you have a lot of problems. Okay,
bad things happen.
Let's start, with a, let's say, lower profile. Let's talk about integration. Okay, so that's
Fair enough.
more manageable and less, let's say, less problematic thing. I think. Well, there are many things to why is it so hard. First of all, we have to understand that these are two worlds so far that are thinking differently and are using different technologies, and for a reason, no? Because they say production systems, they need to produce. Production people are focused to produce, and so maybe they, simply the fact that you have a machine that works well, even if you purchased 3 years ago or 30 years ago, it doesn't matter. It still works well. So the rate of change, the rate of let's say upgrades, innovation, let's say, is much lower for a reason. Simply, you don't want to spend money in a very, let's say, capex-oriented environment where a machine can cost, $1 million, and surely you want to replace as later as possible. And so, if you have a Windows XP on your machine, who cares? The problem is when you have an IT person that wants to install an antivirus on that machine, and that will be, a nightmare for everybody. So the fact is that the two worlds have to collaborate in the way that both OT doesn't have to step in the IT side, the IT has to step in, but lightly way. So the two worlds can collaborate. The data can come and can be shared and can be used by the two worlds. And the same point, you can establish a good architecture where the OT becomes virtualized in a certain way and becomes part of the, as I said before, the IT assets, the data assets, but keeping the OT side in its peculiarity. Think about, for example, password. Nobody changes passwords, if any, in the OT systems simply because you have shifts, and if you change the password, you have to tell everybody in the shift, and if someone forget the password, what you have, you write it on a sticker and you put on the machine. So it's a different environment. You have to combine the two things in a well-suited architecture, in an organization that take care of both sides, and the two sides can work, in a harmony. Let's say it's easy to say, it's difficult to do, and that's the whole thing. I think that's the key thing. It's not just a technology thing, but it's also a technology thing. I remember when the first, I come from the IT side, and when I learned how a SCADA system is programmed and tested, and my hair went straight on top, simply because you test system on production directly, simply because you don't have the possibility to make a test environment. That's the IT people doesn't understand that, and it's a problem. You have many things to consider in putting the two worlds together, but at the end they have to work together. Otherwise, you go nowhere.
That cultural chasm of developing that relationship between the two departments, I think, is the key, right? These situations, it boils down to people, right? It's
starting from building up the team. What we see in many situations where the company in a project, doesn't involve the right people in the right way, or maybe someone starts something but not involving the others. But at the end, either you start something and then that something stops, or simply goes nowhere. And so, the question is how you scale up. You scale up. Okay, of course you have to have the right technology, the right architecture, I say, no, start small, but think big, because don't try to do many things together. Do once at a time, but think, in a bigger way, but putting the right people together. Otherwise, you simply, you are doomed.
Yeah, no, thank you, Antonio. Yeah.
So I would be curious here on this point, because I think it's an interesting take. Many customers we work with, there seems to be a driver from the IT side, because it's all about unlocking value at some point of time and breaking up the data silos. And very often cloud and edge computing play into that. So just in order to understand the point correctly, Antonio, so can you expand a bit on that, how you see the clash here, especially when you bring in drivers like cloud and edge computing, especially when it comes to the, because I do feel there is some kind of convergence, but I'm not sure if I understood your point here.
At a certain point, you have to, let's say, connect to the machines and connect to the operational environment in the OT side. So it's not just interconnection, but also operations, maintenance, and everything related to implementing a complete, let's say, IoT architecture that starts from the machine port, physical port, and goes up to the cloud in a way that everything is synchronized and integrated. So you have different steps. At a certain point, you have the OT steps. And the OT, what organization, technology, operation, processes have to go together, to be
No, I think it's a good point. So as a slightly different angle, so what we currently experience a lot is that also a lot of vendors. So for one example is Opto22, for example, who are also basically trying with technologies for OT. They also try to actively bridge here to the IT side with technologies, and of course we see that a lot of vendors are going this route. So and also, for example, a huge German, let's say, chemical vendor, they are looking, even we're talking about bringing technologies like Kubernetes, like this kind of cloud technologies, even inside factories. And it seems like a lot of drivers here behind that and unlocking the business value are coming more from the IT side. So I think this is pretty interesting. But what you're absolutely right, there is this clash, and there is like the OT people and the IT people usually don't go together. And also from an organizational point of view, they're usually different groups. And so they're not really connected there from subject matter levels. So this is something we experience a lot.
I can make an example for one of our customers that has made up a successful project where let's say, the semantic of information is the OT people learn how to make up that and to deploy, so they can be autonomous in deploying solutions, deploying upgrades in a way that is synchronized with their production schedule. So for example, you cannot stop a machine when IT wants. You can stop a machine when OT wants. And so if you plan a deployment, you have to sync up that. And so if you have the OT that is capable to do that, then they can be autonomous and let's say tune the schedule in a way that is managed by them, of course, aligned with at the end with the final objective, but is not disruptive, let's say. It's a very simple thing, can be a technology thing, but also can be really a operational thing in planning and management.
You bring up that point of synchronization and integration. It's digital transformation requires complex technologies from a myriad of different sources and vendors and stakeholders. Terry, you sit in a unique position, kind of a matchmaker, if you will, between startups, potential corporate partners. I mean, what are some of the challenges of bringing together these companies to create a sustainable solution, something that will grow?
Yeah, Greg, and it's a nice follow-up on the previous discussion we heard, where we see that there is a huge, it's not just a one-letter difference between IT and OT, it's a huge difference, right? And I think it also shows one big challenge we all have, which is that the manufacturing industry is a very conservative industry. And it is it's for good reasons, right? Because manufacturing is a very capital intensive industry. It is an industry also which is, when you change stuff, it takes a long time. So that, think about that for a minute. If you compare that to IT, where IT, you know, you can change stuff in an IT environment in a matter of, you know, weeks or months, whereas in the OT environment, it is taking much longer time. So the point I'm trying to make is that when you talk about digital transformation or innovation in a manufacturing environment, it is a difficult challenge, right? Regardless, even between the OT and the IT. And in addition to that, there is, manufacturers is typically bigger organization, you know, where a culture is based on a certain way of working. It takes long lead times. It's very difficult to change, etc., etc. We know this. So it's even harder than in other industries. However, if you look at startups are way more lean and agile in the way of working, right? So you're right, these startups are looking at opportunities. They look at whatever pain points there are within the operational and manufacturing point of view and see opportunity there. So they can act quick on those challenges, pain points, find solutions, etc. Their challenge is then, of course, to introduce these new technologies or processes or capabilities into the manufacturing in the corporate world as well. And that's where I believe there is a huge opportunity of collaboration between startups on the one hand and the corporate environment, the manufacturing industry on the other hand. And I think, to your point, yes, we sit in that position at MHub where we help these startups in order to start up and scale up. But we do understand that, you know, if you're just on your own as a startup, you will not get there, because you need that cooperation, that collaboration with the corporate partners. That's also the reason why we have corporate partners, where we have manufacturers that are working together with our startups that we have in our realm. Now, this being said, it's difficult, right? Because you have these two different cultures that need to collaborate and work together. So I think one of the basic elements of success is first of all, clear transparency, communication, but also respecting each other, respecting that you have other cultures where the startup is coming with new technology, new products and new services, whilst the corporate is more looking at it from an end-to-end perspective. So it's how to find ways in order to lock in a new process or new technology into the corporate's environment. And that is really important. And I would say there is two points in the whole spectrum. You know, one is where the corporate has this non-invented here type of syndrome, where it says, oh my goodness, something new is coming in and the system is killing it, right? Or it's like on the opposite side, I would say, hey, some new technology is coming and it's like, wow, this might be the savior of the world, and they will almost pamper it to death, right? Suffocating it. So, and it's finding that balance between these two that is so important. And that's where we try to help by, as I mentioned in my starting note, find a place, a pain point, try to introduce, experiment with your new technology and product. And then when you see that you create real value, then you can start to scale. And from that point of view, scale throughout the whole process, the whole manufacturing.
Oh, great overview, great insight. Did you want to add something, Ed, or it looked like you're nodding your head? So.
No, I fully recognize what has been mentioned by Thierry and Dominique and Antonio, and we started off and say it's all about digital manufacturing is all about data, and I would add there it's also all about integration. And it's integration between, let's say, the startups and the multinationals. It's integration between IT and OT. It's integration between new technologies and let's say legacy technologies. It's integration between a boardroom and shop floor. And it all needs to come together. And I see where where you see better collaboration between these levels, there you see more success. And that's so we're working with you mentioned Opto, Dominic, you mentioned Opto 22. I see these vendors, typically OT vendors, moving into the IT space, and that's very helpful. I see typical IT vendors trying to move in the OT space. As long as they don't say, "Hey, we now control it," and then it can be successful. As long as they keep it open standards and open mind on the technology side, on the cultural side, in the processes, then it can be successful.
Got it. You raised an interesting point. I mean, it kind of ties back into a comment that was made earlier, I think by Dominic. I'm going to call on you too for this one, Dominic. You know, when we think about organizations and companies and working together in collaboration, you know, standardization, conformity assessment, open systems, these topics come up. And you know, there's a reason why startups run a certain way, and then there's usually a transition and a transformation as they grow and they scale to different leadership, different organizational management techniques. How important are open systems and standards?
Open standards are extremely important, and I think one of the things, and this is interesting when you look at manufacturing. Completely agree with what Thierry said. This is a very conservative space, and innovation, because as all arguments were already mentioned, because it's so capital expensive, so it's really really expensive to iterate. It's really something you don't want to experiment that much as it is right now. But the thing is, companies need to move faster, and they need to be able to experiment. They need to. This is what you said in the beginning. So if you want to go to Mount Everest, you have your base camps, and then you go step by step by step. And this is nothing new. This is coming full circle. I mean, like literally, all the lean technologies, all the principles like Kaizen and so on, was basically invented by Toyota. And all this stuff, especially like the Kanban process, you see a lot, was brought to the IT side, and now it's going back full circle to the OT side. This is something I find remarkable, actually. And because the goals, the business drivers are still the same, but in order to achieve that, open standards are key. Because for interoperability, you need to define a language. And I think people currently have arguments about, okay, what kind of understanding do we want? Do we just basically want to have to speak English? Do we want to speak the same dialect and so on? But I think in the end, it's about making sure that we can understand ourselves. And this is basically the communication technologies. And we have seen now, while OPC UA is something that in 2008 basically was on the way to basically solve the problem, but in reality, it solved some of the problems and it created other problems. So it was not a silver bullet people were looking for. And by the way, I don't think silver bullets exist. But to be truly open, you need to have an open standard that is supported, can be supported by all vendors, and it needs to be supportable by startups as well as large companies. So the barrier to entry must be pretty low. And this is where open standards like MQTT, for example, which were invented for SCADA system in 1998, and is now used basically from connected cars and also for manufacturing, the whole technology stack are so important. And one of the things we see a lot is Sparkplug currently. Sparkplug is it's basically came from the industrial automation space, basically from oil and gas. And we have so interesting success stories like Chevron. They talk publicly about how their whole, let's say, OT systems and IT integrations, how they solved all these spaghetti integration problems, because integration is one of the hardest things people can do. And enabling technologies like Sparkplug really help here. And the awesome thing is, it was mentioned multiple times today, we're looking at brownfield environments. Nobody has the luxury to start from scratch, or I haven't seen this yet, actually, but this might exist. And this is why you need technologies you can bring into without disrupting what you have. So in order to bring IT and OT together, you must not disrupt anything, especially nothing mission critical. And this is why these enabling open standards are required so you can bridge all these systems without extra disruption. And so I would say it is important. We have seen the importance of open standards when you look at the history of the internet. And also, frankly, we have seen this also in manufacturing before. But I mean, there are these huge vendors and they still want to lock you into their ecosystem, which makes sense. But nowadays, in order to get the flexibility you need to experiment, to be as agile as on IT, you really need open communication protocols and standards.
No, good perspective. Thank you. And I just took a peek down at the Q&A, and we have got a plethora of questions coming in. So fantastic. Keep those coming. We're going to transition to that shortly. To see if we can take a dive into some of these Q&A portion. We've got about 20 minutes left here. So I'm going to give you one little speed dating around here. So if I ask you to reflect on your past experience, what is there something out there or one thing that you wish you knew, back in the thrilling days of yesteryear that you know now that would have made a significant distance in driving a digital transformation journey that you embarked on or that you helped another organization embark on? So let's do a real quick round answer for this one. I'll start with you, Antonio.
The lessons learned. Well, first of thing we learned that we have to be patient. We had to be patient. We started to, let's say, propose, IoT and digital transformation. Can you hear me?
Yes, yep, you're fine.
That was back in the 2012, 2013, 2014. And Industry 4.0 as a name did not even exist. So you could see people looking at you and staring at you and say, okay, good, we talk later. Not be very patient in that, because people start to understand what they can do. And then when, the motivation comes when companies really have a pain and they understand that the pain can be solved by, the good digitalization solution. Also, what we learned that the people are important. So it's not just a technology. You have to learn what they want, what they need in the different stakeholders, and understanding that the motivation, to change. We had, for example, in Italy, 2017 was a key year because then fiscal benefits or fiscal rebate came as an incentive for factory transformation, and so everybody now then started to think about. And so we, being a technology company, we had to become also expert in tax law, because we had to explain that to the customer, simply because nobody understood that. Only let's say the technology understood how to do that, and so you have to be very flexible in that, and try to get the motivation and understanding that. Probably, we would have developed the product a bit differently, but things goes as they go, and but what we saw back in 2015 is more or less what we see today. So we had a good view, and we are in a good time now to work on this digital transformation.
Great. Hey, Dominic, how about perspectives from your standpoint?
So one of the things that would really help me back when I was starting was to understand that technology and basically as all important things on Earth are coming in waves. So, and all things go back full circle. So I think I tried to make the point before, even when it comes like this flexibility, this agility in manufacturing, which basically is coming from manufacturing, brought to IT, is now coming full circle back. Also technologies like MQTT for device connectivity, they were invented for SCADA in 1998. So it's actually as old as the World Wide Web, or almost as old. And then in 2012 or so, it made a comeback and was used like on the IT side for connecting cars. So when you drive a car today, on any continent, you very likely use MQTT as technology that was invented by SCADA for SCADA problems. And now these technologies are coming back into the manufacturing space where actually they were invented for, or in the industrial automation space. And it just takes time. So things are going full circle all the time. And also, so I think this is similar to the lesson Antonio just mentioned, things take time, absolutely. But also, and this is something because we are also a company, we are a startup working with the largest Fortune 500 companies on earth on digitization project for manufacturing. And so the thing we also learned is there is so much, the manufacturing space is so ripe for disruption. This is so ripe for disruption. And so I do think 10 years from now, or I would even say 5 years from now, when you look at how manufacturing will be done, this will completely be different from what we have today. And technology is accelerating exponentially. And so I mean, we have a great future ahead of us. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Fantastic. Edward, any thoughts from your standpoint, lessons learned?
Yeah, Dominic made the perfect bridge because he mentioned technology is accelerating. It's accelerating for let's say the past decades, and I would argue that technology has overtaken the human, and already. So to me, the technology is not a challenge anymore. The challenge is the people. And how to bring the people along on this journey, and how to mobilize the people, how to mobilize the sites, and of course for digital manufacturing transformation, you need a clear leadership and reason to change. But that often starts at top level. But it's all, at the end of the day, it's the people at shop floor that need to execute it. And how do you bring those people along on that journey? That's where I find the biggest challenge. And while you want to do that, you want to keep operational. You're making a change while in doing the production in full production, and even more challenging targets of production. And what we also have done is what I typically see. I work for the bigger multinationals. Over the past decades, we have tried to streamline them as much as possible. So we are focusing 100% on operations, but all the supporting staff has been basically reduced to nothing. So what we also see is a huge knowledge gap on the operational level, and so what we're trying to do is making a big change, and again in incremental small steps, but we want to move to a big change with people that have increasing targets for operations, that have a very limited knowledge still available on how things have been created 30-40 years ago, a very limited documentation, and a very fast evolving technology.
Outstanding. Terry, any parting 30-second final words of wisdom to your former self?
Yeah, I love what Edward was actually saying. It's all about the people. I mean, it has been a constant throughout the discussion today. If you don't have the people with you, then it's extremely difficult. And how do you do that? How are you? Because who are those key people? The key people are the guys and girls on the shop floor. And we need to inform them, we need to communicate to them, we need also to train them to provide these new skills and let them know that this is not just about replacing them with robots and other whatever machines. No, it's about augmenting them in terms of having better safety, having a better productivity, and so forth. So better employability. So how do we train all these people? And it's all about starting small, where you create an impact, where they also see the impact they create by using that new technology, and then learn from it, experiment and learn. Start small, but think big, and have these people, train them, communicate to them. If you don't have those with you, it will be very difficult.
No, great. Thank you, Terry. Well, I'm gonna transition us now into the Q&A portion. So I'm looking here. We've got a lot of questions. So I'll pretty much say we're not going to get through all of these, but I think what IoT World can commit to is if we don't get to them live today, we'll circle back with some kind of a document post-event and get back in touch with you folks. Let me jump into it. Let's kind of kick it off here. We've got one. I think Charlie's got a good question. Yeah. And this is more back to the cultural point, Edward. So how do you convince personnel that the process improvement through industrial IoT is for their personal advantage? So how do you get that buy-in in that what's in it for me?
Yeah, good question. I would say, yeah, you explain them and convince them that life can become more easy. And if you look at shop floor, it's not an easy life there. It's if you look at the day-to-day way of working, operating of these people, it's often extremely hectic. And at the start of the day, they don't know what will happen during that day with all kinds of events and shutdowns and turnarounds, etc. So I think what we're looking at is that make it more visible and predictable and far better under control, and that makes their life at the end of the day easier. And this is what we are looking for.
Anyone want to add to that?
No, I think I fully agree with what Edward was saying, and to my earlier point, it's all about making clear to them that this is helping them, because too often, and I will put it black and white to make it very clear, right? Too often technology is seen by the shop floor as something that will disrupt their lives, and disrupt in terms of taking their jobs. Because what do we see even as a non-expert, a person that doesn't know anything about manufacturing? Technology is equating to robots. Robots is equating to loss of jobs. So that is a very black and white picture for the guys and girls on the shop floor. We should clearly state that it's more than that. It's not just by displacing jobs. No, it's augmenting their job. It's making their job safer, to be more productive, so that they are more motivated as well. I was talking to a shop, a plant manufacturer, a manager, and it was all about the length of the lunch break. It was, let's say for sake of argument, it was 30 minutes. And he saw that the productivity of his employees was lower after the lunch break than before that. And some investigation of the data showed that, I mean, the lunch break was somewhat too small. And it's a very simple example. The fact of increasing that lunch break from 30 minutes to 35 minutes suddenly make the operators, the machine operators, more happy, because they could do whatever they need to do, to go to the locker, take their food, to go to the canteen, go back to the locker, etc., etc. They became a happier person at their machines again after 35 minutes, and the productivity went up just by giving 5 minutes more. And this is a very simple example to just make the point, but that's what we should be trying to do. It's examples where you make a clear point, where it becomes clear for everybody, the C-suite, the top floor, towards the bottom floor. This is helping us.
Great perspective. Yeah, Mohammed's got an interesting question. I'm going to throw it out there to the collective. Many of the companies are very conservative with their data, of course, for valid reasons. But how would this technology help on a community level for manufacturing domain to evolve by learning from others' failures? If all the data is kept in a silo, so as a learning experience, how do you run your machine language models when actual data isn't available for them to learn from? So, any perspective on that? How you can kind of bridge that mindset to keep data siloed and not share it organizationally?
Well, first of all, if I can I give my answer?
Yeah, absolutely. Please, Antonio.
Well, first of all, I think we see already across complex supply chains requests to share data, maybe specific data regarding quality, or maybe regarding specific productions. There is already the request. coming from the OM, for example, to the tier 1, tier 2. So whoever implements, let's say, IoT or the industry digitalization solution must be prepared to share information. Anybody that builds a solution that is silo designed, he is going to be forced to change that in a few years from now. So that's the first point. The second point, I think, is more intriguing because it's something we are actually thinking, that is how to benefit data across, let's say, the community, okay? And this is the, some thinking we are doing about whether not just the machine data, but the proper behavior of a machine, or let's say the how to use a machine or how to set up a machine can be used, let's say, beyond the factory itself, but also across the companies. It's an intriguing thing because this goes across, intellectual property of the machine vendor or intellectual property of the company itself. But it's a very interesting topic about to think, in a few years from now.
No, thank you, Antonio. I think we've got a poll popping up right now. So if you could take a moment while we're starting to wrap up our session here, just give us a quick rating on the scale of 1 to 5, what you're feeling. So don't be shy, be bashful. We need incremental ways to improve. So if you have feedback for us, we'd love to hear it, good or bad. So Jerry has a question as well. And this is an interesting one. He says, is there not a commonality between IT and OT, in that they both consume and generate quite a bit of data? And could this present an opportunity to use artificial intelligence or machine language to provide a level of intelligence to bridge them in a digital transformation? So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, the answer is definitely yes. The key issue or challenge we have today is that we are living in an industry where both the OT and IT were separate departments, separate organizations, and therefore have their own data in their own silos. The key challenge is therefore to bring that data together. IT was mostly concerned about the IT stuff, and OT was mostly concerned about the OT stuff. Now, with the income of the industrial IoT, as I would call it, you need to bring these streams together. And there is a huge amount of data there. But the key question is like, what is the right data? I always say it's not about the amount of data, it's finding the right data. And what the key thing is, IT should work on the right operational data, and OT should also use the right IT data. And if you can bring those two together, you can do enormous amount of work. But it's, again, to the points that were raised by Dominic earlier. It's like, how do you bring those two together? What is the standards you use in order to make sure you create a data lake or an environment where you can really bank on all that data to get the right insights, and based on those insights, make the right decisions.
No, thank you, Terry. Maybe some future looking for the young buckos, women and men that are out there starting studies. Christina put a comment. There's been several other ones here as well. I'll try and dovetail them together. She's about to enter a study in data analytics. Wanted to know what to look out for from a jobs perspective in IoT manufacturing, and what classes she could take. So maybe shape that into what advice would you have for students who are embarking in a career, or looking to embark in a career in the industrial Internet of Things, from your perspective?
So I can talk a bit about the data analytics. So especially because this is something that is an extremely important job, and this will very likely be a job that will change quickly fast from what these folks are doing. So just yesterday I read the new Stanford AI report, which recently came out, which discusses how AI technology, artificial intelligence technologies are deployed and for what use cases. And unsurprisingly, in manufacturing, not a lot of successful AI projects are currently deployed. I mean, everybody wants to talk about that, but it's really not like that I mean, everybody's just talking about predictive maintenance, and really a lot of value-added use cases beyond that are still emerging. And one of the main reasons is that the data is not accessible. And this is not just because it resides in systems. And I think this is what the other panelists also pointed out. You need to have the right data and to find the right data in order to basically feed machine learning models and also make working with that. So I do not think that, I do think this basically is a data science description. So I would heavily, if this person is interested in these kind of technologies, I would urge the person to go into AI studies. Also, again, I can just recommend the Stanford AI report. Also, there's a huge chapter of the job opportunities, and we have a growing market here. But be aware, this is something for people working in startups. Startup funding is decelerating actually for AI projects, while funding from large corporations is accelerating. So very, very likely, as the trend is right now for the last 3 years, it will be that these kind of jobs will mainly be staffed by large corporations and not startups. I do hope actually that the trend will change.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dominic. And gentlemen, thank you so much for your time and your insights today. I think you shared some, definitely dropped some knowledge bombs on the folks here. So truly appreciate it. Thank you for everyone for attending today. Thank you to our sponsors as well. A couple items, please plan on attending our happy hour, our virtual happy hour this evening, hosted on Clubhouse. For those of you that have an Apple-enabled device, I think we've got information on how to log into that as well on the agenda here. And I think I saw it posted in the chat too. So coming up next, our next session is new business models enabled by IIoT and AI. So I want to thank everyone for joining us today. Make it a great one. We'll see you in the next session.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. See ya.
Thank you.